What's going on, everybody? You're listening to Mr. Enigma's Pop Culture Queries.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elocrity.
And I am Psyras.
I have some of the best and most well-known Twitch streamers in the entire goddamn universe here with me today. You know, I kind of feel like I'm have the angel and the devil. Like I have
Which one's which?
I have Psyras on my right, and it's just like the angelic voice of reason. And I have Elocrity on my left, just the devil whispering sweet nothings into my ear.
I mean, it's not too far off.
Okay, today's topic, we're talking about Halo. Not just like the game and, oh, is it good? Is it bad? No, that's dumb. We're going to be talking about moral questions. We're going to be talking about, did the Forerunners have a point? Like, blowing up the universe? Galaxy? Whatever they did? I actually need to make a confession. I haven't played these games since Halo 2. Yeah, so I had to do a bunch of wiki searching on this topic. So I have two experts with me for you today to help me with this topic. So first, let's talk about what Halo is. In case you've been living under a rock for the last 21 years. Halo came out on November 16th of 2001 with the launch of the Xbox by Microsoft. Developed by Bungie and then published by Microsoft. It was the staple game, Halo Combat Evolved, full name, was the staple game for the Xbox and kind of was there to combat the PlayStation, and at the time was the other big one that was there at the time.
And was also probably the first big American title to really pioneer and also change the face of how we see modern shooters.
Yeah, that too. Halo currently has 16 titles to its name. 8 of them are actually in the storyline, I guess is what you could say, starting with Halo Reach, going all the way to Halo Infinite. And then you have 8 games that just kind of fill in the blanks as just shooting people.
There is one game where, well, technically 2, Halo Wars. It is a strategy game. It's not a first-person shooter.
Oh, I thought it was more like Cooking Mama with guns.
Close enough.
That's why it's called Master Chef.
Pain.
Just the look
pain.
on everyone's faces.
Cyrus, would you mind giving us a quick synopsis of what the fuck I'm talking about?
The Halo were rings that were created by essentially the Forerunners to wipe out all life in the universe, and we are essentially trying to stop those rings from getting activated.
So the rings are just a giant...
They're a giant weapon.
Yeah, they're a giant nuke that just blows up the galaxy, right?
A giant nuke that you can live on.
Oh yeah, it's terraformed, which is neat.
Weird.
Because I've always wanted to live on a nuke. You want to live on an active volcano? I have.
Living on an active volcano the size of Titan.
Yes. So the main character is John Spartan, right?
Correct.
The Demolition Man.
More or less.
More or less, because that is Sylvester Stallone's character's name, right?
Yes, you are correct.
In Demolition Man? Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Want to make sure.
Him and the Arbiter. John Spartan is the main character throughout all of them, but in Halo 2 and 3, there is another main character called the Arbiter.
Who's voiced by Keith
David.
Keith David, who's Goliath from Gargoyles, which is just there's a fun fact for you guys. He's also the bad guy in Princess and the Frog. Also another fun fact for you guys. He's a very talented voice actor and regular actor. He's been in lots of things.
He's a very accomplished actor, both in voice and in film.
Yes. Thank you. That's what I meant. So now we get to, like, how did we find the rings?
So the humans found them by making a random jump after the fall of a planet called Reach. And they made a random jump and they randomly found the first Halo ring. There are 7 of them, by the way. And for some strange reason, we decided to drop down onto the ring without any research about the ring.
Didn't scan it. Didn't send scouts.
Didn't even know if it had oxygen.
Didn't do nothing. Just like, we're landing on this bitch here.
And that is where Halo Reach 2 takes place, where everybody dies again, right?
Spoilers.
Oh. Anyway, next question: what is the Covenant?
The Covenant is a faction of multiple alien races that have come together to form a religion based around the Forerunner technology, the Halo Rings.
Okay,
As
great.
well as galactic domination, it seems.
So we're here to talk about the Forerunners and the Halo Rings specifically, but in context, there was a big old war going on between humans and the Covenant at the immediate moment in the story where we pop in. Why did the Forerunners build a giant bomb that would kill everything? 7 of them. Sorry.
Because they thought they were better than everyone else.
Technically, yes, but they also did that because of what is called the Flood. They were terrified of the Flood because they were losing a battle against them.
What is the Flood?
The Flood is a parasite that infects all living things and just keeps continuously growing and just devouring any living organism in sight.
Okay. So we have to make a stance. We don't have to agree with each other on whether or not the Forerunners building a bomb to get rid of a zombie fungus.
Technically, it didn't get rid of them, it just starves them out because it kills everything else.
Yeah, it doesn't even kill them, it kills what they feed on. So you're creating mass genocide to kill what you were initially intending to.
So if it's a way to kill the Flood, we have to set a precedence of where they justified in making a weapon that would kill everything.
Were they justified in making a weapon to kill everything? No. Had they been successful in making a weapon to be able to kill just the Flood? Yes. They just didn't care about anything else.
They were able to kill off the smaller Floods, but as soon as they became a big enough mass, which was called a grave mind, normal conventional weapons would not work against it. And that thing grew to a planetary size, which is called a key mind, which decimated planet after planet, and nothing could stop that thing.
Okay, so they're not actually worried about the little Floods at the time, because I could kill that with a shotgun. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
You can kill that thing with a fist.
Yes. Okay, so we're not worried about those. We're worried about a planet-sized zombie.
Yes, the thing that has all control over the smaller guys.
Okay.
Because once they become organized and tactical, they become a lot more dangerous.
Okay, is there a key mind alive in the games now?
No. The only key mind that has ever existed were in the Halo books.
And that was previous to the Forerunners?
Yes, the Forerunners created the Halo Rings to stop this thing specifically.
Okay, so we would say that they were successful?
In stopping the grave mind, at least, I would assume. I haven't read any of the books, so I don't know how that story plays out.
Essentially, they set the Halo Rings off, killed everything in existence, and starved it out.
Okay.
Although technically it's not everything in existence. The Halo Rings do have a limited reach, and everything past that area, no one actually knows what's past them.
That's considered dark space, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, were they right in building a bomb that would kill everything in a way to kill bad things? Because, like you were telling me earlier, that they did take specimens, right?
Yes,
and they put them back on the planet like an Adam and Eve bullshit, right?
Yes, they brought everything to what's not cleverly named the Ark.
Oh wow!
So
Gee.
original.
They took species from all over the galaxies and stored them through a slip space dimensional portal to a thing called the Ark, which is what can activate all the Halo Rings. They stored them in there so that those specimens would not be affected by the Halo Rings.
So they have the technology to build pockets in dimensions, slip space.
Yes.
Couldn't they have just put the key mind in it?
No,
Oh.
because the key
Making
mind.
something that big for being able to open a pocket dimension for something planet-sized is very different from having to make something even starship-sized.
Okay, so the Ark is about starship size.
Yes,
Okay,
it's not anywhere near close to being a planet size.
and it's not as big as a Halo.
No, not even close.
Okay.
But also, the key mind also had the capability of infecting AIs and corrupting them. So they actually prevented quite a bit of Forerunners from going into slip space and escaping.
Oh. Okay. Where are the Forerunners now?
As of Halo 4, they are all dead.
Oh, so there are still some left around.
There was only one, and he was locked away in a prison.
So he was a bad Forerunner that the Forerunners locked up, or did somebody else lock him up because he survived?
Specifically, the librarian locked him up,
Who is that?
who is another Forerunner who categorized and created the Ark, specifically, to bring all the specimens to them. The evil Forerunner, the Didact, just wanted to wipe everything out and kill everything.
And he was the main antagonist of Halo 4, correct?
Yes.
The prison guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The one in the gigantic orange sphere.
Okay. Not the librarian. The librarian's a good guy?
Yes?
You put an asterisk next to it.
Because he built a bunch of weapons for mass genocide.
She.
She built a bunch of weapons for mass genocide.
And it's not exactly clear. You do see the librarian, but I'm not entirely sure if it's an AI, or if it's like a recording, or if it's actually the librarian.
We don't actually have any kind of real indication on how long any lifespan is for really any race in Halo other than humans. Because to the best of our assumption, based off of humans, we can maybe live a bit longer than what we're doing now, just because it's the future. But there's no lifespan, to the best of my knowledge, that's been established for any other race. So they could have just died out from old age, or could have starved to death.
Okay. So, were the Forerunner right and justified in building a weapon that would destroy everything if it meant that nothing would die from zombification?
I would say yes, they were justified because they had limited time, and without doing that, everything would just be dead. I mean, the Flood would starve out once they ran out of food.
It just accelerated the process while preserving some for regrowth.
Exactly. So I would say they were justified.
Okay.
I'll say that they were justified. They're justified in building them for the sake of eradicating the biggest threat. But let's also not forget that they're the ones who drove that threat to begin in the first place.
Elaborate. I don't know.
So the Flood is a mutation of what they were called the Precursors. They were the original life essence that created all other life in the known universe.
Including the Forerunners.
Yes. The Forerunners decided, we're better than you guys, so they went to war with the Precursors, and because the Forerunners were so much more advanced at making technology, they were able to wipe out most of the Precursors. The Precursors that were able to live decided to escape by turning into dust that the humans found, and it mutated the humans into what the Flood is now.
Were the Precursors on Earth? Were
No.
they the original Earthlings?
No.
Okay.
If you think of it in a cosmic sense, the Precursors are effectively the pantheon of gods that created the universe.
We're all space dust, man.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Exactly, actually.
We're all space dust, man.
Yeah, if you want to think of it in a religious sense, they're God.
They're God.
And then
Their creation killed them.
rose up to kill them.
Also, Frankenstein style.
Dark.
Also, arguably, humanity, depending on which direction we go.
Yeah. And who do we hand off as the reclaimers when we destroy the planet?
Depends on if we find anybody else first.
Fair enough. Anyway, so you guys both said they were justified in building a weapon. I do not have nearly enough information to make this call, but they used all their resources to stop this key mind initially, and then they ran out of options, right? How do they reproduce the Flood?
The Flood essentially reproduced by like how normal viruses reproduce. They infect a host and mutate the host and can create more of themselves in the host.
You can kind of think of it very similarly to like the zombifying mushrooms that affect ants in South America, or like the zombifying fungus from The Last of Us.
Okay, yeah. I do know both of those references.
It's just the closest comparison that I can make is that while yes they stay more of a dust and on a cellular level cause more of an infection in that regard, as opposed to the larger spores that are produced by fungus and mushrooms, the effect that it has is much more similar to that of the fungus and mushrooms in taking over the host and morphing them or changing them, mutating them, versus a virus, which in most cases, in regards to zombification, unless we're talking about like Left 4 Dead and that kind of a thing, just leads to a bunch of crawlers.
Okay. So like parasect.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I am on the same page now. Couldn't they have just nuked whatever planet the flood was on?
At that point, the flood had already gone galactic. It
Yes.
was not just isolated onto one planet.
Yes, because the humans didn't know how to deal with them, so they were running away planet to planet to get away from the flood. And eventually found their way into Forerunner territory, where the Forerunners thought that that was an aggressive move by the humans and went to war with the humans.
Okay. Jumping forward a little bit. Master Chief is trying to prevent the rings from going off, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that his entire goal for the entire series?
No.
No.
Okay, so like he succeeds in not having the rings go off eventually, right? Like
Yes,
he's just like, yeah, we're done.
The Halo series, as far as the main games are concerned, have only covered 2 rings, correct? Or is
Yes.
it 3 now?
2 rings and the Ark.
2 rings in the Ark. And so the first ring was the ring, I believe, that was taken care of at the end of Halo 3? Or was that taken care of in Halo 4?
The first ring was dealt with in Halo 1 when they blew up the Pillar of Autumn and destroyed half the ring.
I couldn't remember if they had blown up the first ring in the first game or if that happened a little bit later. I knew that they had at least been to 2 rings.
Yes. They were planning on doing that with the second ring at the end of Halo 2 when one of the human ships came crashing into the second ring carrying an abundance of flood.
Ah.
Is that how the flood travels? Just by crashing ships into things?
Yes, because...
More or less. They infect the crew and whoever's on the ship, and then since they don't know how to drive.
Well, technically they are able to gain a little bit of information from their host, which is the reason why they're able to take off. But they don't know how to land.
Landing's a lot harder.
Especially since the flood is actually immune to bludgeoning damage.
So
you said you can kill it with a fist.
You can kill the babies with a fist, but that doesn't mean that you'll be able, like, they'll still spread the dust and spores, so the most you're doing is, yay, I punched a flood pod, and now I'm infected.
Mm-hmm. So, if they were justified in building this giant weapon, how did the flood come back?
Because they didn't get it all. The biggest part with the Halo rings is it killed the key mind. It didn't go as far as to wipe out all the flood in the galaxy.
It also didn't help that some of the Forerunners decided to put them in test tubes and try to study them, which preserved their life until the Covenant accidentally opened them up on the first Halo and reactivated them.
Okay, quick question. If you were on a Halo ring when it goes off,
You die.
you die because you're on the Halo ring, right?
At least I would assume as much.
And is the Ark just in like a pocket that's just like can't be touched by any of the explosions?
I don't know anything about the structural integrity or like the architecture of the Halo rings, but I'd imagine if you're inside the ring itself, like maybe not in the inner diameter of it, but actually within the material that is the ring in one of the lower levels.
The underground.
Yeah, effectively. There is some level of protection and affordability that's taken there, because otherwise every Halo would be a one and done. You'd use it and there'd be nobody else to ever teach anyone how to use it again.
Because the Halos don't destroy things, it sends an energy wave that eviscerates living objects.
Question. You said the Keymind takes over AIs and corrupts them. Do they get uncorrupted when it dies?
I actually have no idea.
I mean, the Keymind would be dead, so the flood that are in the AI wouldn't be receiving any information.
Yeah.
But unless it's like a queen bee situation where the bees who are taking her orders just naturally die afterwards, I'm not entirely sure, because the flood have shown themselves maybe not necessarily capable of sapient thought, but at least of sentient thought in the regard of they recognize themselves as an existence.
That's what I was getting from the Wikipedia I was reading about them. Is that basically they understand, they get organized when there's a grave mind or key mind for bigger senses, but when there's a grave mind,
whoever's the bigger flood is the one who's in charge
and can control the other ones. But if there is no bigger one, then they kind of just like go on barbarian rampage where they can just kill anything that gets near them.
Kill and eat. They go primal.
Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Barbarian rage.
Yeah.
Also, with AIs function after around 5 to 6 years due to what Halo calls rampancy.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's the overarching story with Cortana after 3.
Oh, she gets corrupted.
It's her lifespan, like her AI lifespan, is running out. She's, I think, on year 6 or 7.
Year 8.
She's in year 8 in Halo 4.
Yes, and they're only supposed to live for 5 years. Essentially, what rampancy is the AIs gather too much information that their bodies can handle, and they rip themselves apart by thinking.
Imagine the singularity, but not as bad.
But not as bad as the singularity.
Well, imagine what
Get that on a shirt.
Imagine
It's bad, but it's not singularity bad.
Imagine the AI singularity, but only on a singular scale. So one AI learns everything that there is to know, and it can't handle it, so it blows itself up, rather than taking it out on everything like Ultron.
Mm-hmm. So, if we're going to justify the building of this giant weapon and everything like that, here, I don't see it as necessarily justified.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I would rather be nuked or energy zapped,
energy eviscerated
than be turned into a zombie. But if I didn't know I was being turned into a zombie, because it happens instantaneously unless they want information from my brain.
Oh, it does not happen instantaneously.
The flood transformation is not a quick thing.
Is it not?
You feel every single piece of your body mutating.
It is a slow and painful process. Like, there's a reason why in Halo 1, when you're going into the first spot where you encounter Flood into that first temple, there's one Marine who's already there, who's the only one who's alive, and he's leaning back against one of the walls with his assault rifle, and he's got his helmet off, and he's freaking out, he's hyperventilating, he's having a problem. And you can choose to shoot him and put him out of his misery, because he's going to die regardless. He has a fatal wound.
Also, if you don't, he will start shooting you.
Yeah, if you don't, before, not too long after you pass by him, he will start going crazy and shoot you. And if you don't do it, you will start to hear him scream in agony as he begins to mutate. And the entire time when you're walking through and after, you're just hearing him, not necessarily weeping cry, but cry in just existential agony as his body is slowly beginning to mutate from the inside until it turns into the pod that he winds up turning into.
Oh god. Okay.
It is to quote 300, this will not be over quickly and you will not enjoy it.
With that in mind, I want to bring it closer to home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking the justification of using a weapon of mass destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make an imaginary island.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there is a deadly virus on it.
Mm-hmm.
That if leaves this island will kill everybody. Would it be justified for the greater good of humankind to kill everyone on this island?
To kill everyone on the island? I think it's definitely inhumane.
Yeah.
By every stretch of the word. In any stretch of the imagination, it is absolutely inhumane. Whether or not it is the best course for people and for the rest of the planet,
mm-hmm.
If you want the short answer, technically yes, because it solves the problem the fastest, but just because it's a right answer doesn't mean it's the correct answer.
There's also the fact that those people will die eventually due to...
unless a cure is found.
Yes. But there's also the fact that it is possible to close off that island completely while dealing with the flood. That was not an option.
Okay, let's say it's a small country on a major continent. Say it's in Central America, and it's heading north and south.
The bigger problem that you end up running into with those kind of things is the wider the area that there is the quote-unquote infection, the harder it becomes to quarantine. And if you don't have the ability to quarantine, at that point, all you can really do is start culling once it breaks outside of the area.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you have the ability to make it inside the quote-unquote infected area, be it a flood, be it a virus, what have you, and either fix it from the root source or be able to eliminate whatever the base cause of the problem is, the only other way to be able to eliminate the problem is to destroy all the product of the problem.
Okay.
Going back to the Halo stuff, In one of the books, it actually stated that the humans found a cure when they were fighting the Forerunners. They did not actually find a cure. The flood made them think they found a cure, so that people would be in the future trying to figure out what the cure was.
And waste time.
Yes.
Okay.
So the flood at that point was
Intelligent.
smart.
It was intelligent enough to be able to throw people off of its tracks and lead people down wild goose chases centuries down the line.
Yes.
Okay. So if we got into like the idea of, let's go back to that Central American country that has it going out and everything like that. I want to talk about a different weird notion that's like, it doesn't come up nearly as much for, the mass genocide. But imagine like we took 2 healthy people from this country, killed literally everyone else in the country, and then put those 2 people back. You're like, great, you're king and queen, repopulate your country.
Yeah, but then we run into the problem of lack of gene pool diversity and incest.
Yeah, isn't that what happens in the Ark?
They took quite a few species. They didn't just take a male and female. They took quite a bit.
Okay, so they took like a pocket full
of
people.
A better version of Noah's Ark, not just 2 of everything.
So if we just took
like a couple families.
Okay, so if we just like picked up a small village in this Central American country, and then just like killed everybody else in the country, and then put them back, and then you're just like,
fucked.
yeah, now be free, frolic, do whatever you guys do in this country, and then just leave them there to their own demises.
I mean, to be fair, that's like a good majority of how a lot of like refugee countries and nations got started, is people just like not necessarily being picked up and put places, but just 2, 3, 4, 5 families all escape from one tyrannical area, go to what they think is what is an unpopulated land, build a small frontier town that turns into a little village that evolves into a town that turns into a city, and then as it just grows and grows and grows until it's taken down. The biggest thing in my opinion, for that kind of a thing is if you can save as many people as possible, you always should.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
how do you do that through an entire galaxy?
You can't.
Yeah.
There's way too many lives that end up being weighed in the balance, and it's an impossibility to be able to save everyone. And also with from my interpretation of the Forerunners and how they viewed themselves, the Forerunners would have only gone through the effort of saving just enough for the sake of repopulation and themselves. They'd have saved as many of themselves as they could, just because.
Actually, they decided that they were not worthy of the mantle, so
really?
they voluntarily decided to extinct themselves.
Oh, so the Forerunners actually recognized the folly of their own hubris.
Yes, except for the Didact.
Understandable.
So, is this where you said mantle? Is this the mantle of responsibility or whatever they were talking about?
Yes.
That they handed out
dominant species of the galaxy, essentially.
Has to take care of everyone. This is a lot of like.
There's a lot of philosophy in this.
Okay,
but the Forerunners decided to hand the mantle down to the human race after the repopulation,
unknowingly.
Yeah, so the humans didn't know that they're the reclaimers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which only the reclaimers can activate a halo ring.
See, only the humans have the ability to activate the ring. So even if we had let the Covenant run rampant through the galaxy and stop them from the planets, and they tried to touch the rings, none of them could have done anything with it, unless they wound up taking a human captive and figuring out that it's them to use it.
Which they did in Halo 2.
Yeah, which is what... who'd they take for that again?
Commander Keyes.
That's right. It's
the daughter of the Commander Keyes in Halo 1.
Yeah, that's right. They took Commander Keyes in 2 for that, and then... Or, the only options was to either kidnap and do that like they did in Halo 2, or if for some reason or another there was a human who decided to go turncoat or was brainwashed and join the Covenant.
So, we're about halfway, and I think we've pretty close to wrapped up our feelings on it because we all pretty much agreed.
Yeah, like probably what I would say for my closing statement in regard to the whole thing on were they quote-unquote justified? They were justified strictly in the regard of they had to clean up their own mess.
Was it their mess or was it the humans' mess?
It was their mess because
if they hadn't driven the precursors into the point of them having to turn into dust to escape and survive, then the humans would have never wound up encountering that dust, causing the mutation that triggered the flood to begin with.
Oh, okay. So it's the consequences of my own actions thousands of years later.
Yes.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Behold,
That
the
wasn't
consequences
technically
of
even
my
1,000
actions.
years later.
This was not a long period.
No. Between the Forerunner Precursor War to the Forerunner Flood War, it was only maybe a couple hundred.
Okay.
Like, if you're looking at the number for time span, it's a lot of time. Like, most things on a human scale don't survive that long. But if you're thinking on an overarching cosmic scale, a 200-year gap is not a long period of time.
That's true.
Because, I mean, if we're thinking about it, in the 1800s, we're in 2022 now. In 1822, we had working steam engines, we had printing presses, we had a bunch of intuitive technology that we still in some way, shape, or form use today, just a much more advanced version of it.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On a galactic scale, I read a lot of Star Wars, as you could probably tell. And 25,000 years.
Is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like the beginning of the Republic, and everybody's like, okay,
I mean,
yep. that's
hell,
where it
if you're
starts.
just taking into consideration the age of Earth from a Judeo-Christian or non-Judeo-Christian standpoint. Judeo-Christian standpoint thinks the Earth is around the 7,000 to 9,000 year mark, and then evolution and creationism teaches that it's multiple billions, if not hundreds of billions of years old.
Yep.
And in either regard, a couple hundred years is pennies.
Yeah, definitely. So, for this next part, I want to foreshadow. I want to pick your guys' brains a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to do about the flood now?
After Halo 3, after sending the Gravemind and the rest of the Flood to where the Ark is, they blew up the Ark, and apparently the Flood Ark is in that space. Just
Vanished.
yeah.
Just all of them?
So
That's the thing. That's what they
that's the theory.
that's what they want us to think, but I do not think that's the case.
Depending on the success of Halo Infinite, and as well as where where 343 and any of the authors who have the licensing to do any of the Halo books and such decide to go, the Flood very well they could stay as they are right now, which for all intent and purposes is dead and gone, and their existence is no more. Or there could be a few scavengers that come back, and who knows, maybe in a few hundred years we'll have another Gravemind to deal with. But
And
for the
this
time
actually figure out how to
deal
kill
with them. But for the time being, as is, the Flood are dead and gone. There is no more Flood, and as of Halo 4, they were replaced by the Forerunners and then immediately wiped out.
Okay.
So now we're having to deal with, in Halo Infinite, an entirely different faction that is unrelated to the Covenant, the Flood, the Forerunners, and the Precursors.
So this is just like the story of John Spartan never catching a break?
Well, in this time, no, it's the continuation of John Spartan never catching a break and the never-ending search for Cortana.
Oh, he still hasn't found Cortana.
No, at the end of Halo 5, Cortana has left, what was it, a Sword World?
Yes, I think so.
I don't know what that means.
There are two different types of worlds that are categorized by humans, a shield world and a sword world. A shield world is there to protect the people that are on that world. A sword world is there to advance technology and
Attack other planets?
Shields are the barracks, swords are the R&D.
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, she escaped from that, and then, as of Halo Infinite, has been on the lam for 2 years. So she's effectively a 10-year-old rampant AI who hasn't been put down yet.
According to Cortana, the rampancy, since she has found whatever she found, we're not entirely sure what it was,
Has regressed.
has nullified it completely.
That's what she says. And for people who have played Halo Infinite and completed it, I have not played it to completion. That might very well be the case. There could be story there that's expounded on or completed for all I know.
Except for the fact in Halo 5, she goes on saying that she has to carry out the mantle and just kill people.
So she has the mantle of responsibility now?
She has the weapon that can kill people. Just eviscerate them completely.
She holds the presidential launch codes. She just doesn't have access necessarily to the computer that sets them off.
Gotcha. So is she the bad guy now?
That's the big question. like I said, having not finished Halo Infinite, I don't have a solid grasp on what exactly Cortana plays into the story aside from just being a goal at this point. She is an objective that we are reaching towards. She is what we're working for. But it hasn't established yet if there has been a need or if there's going to be a need that she turns from an objective to a threat.
So if we're looking at Halo as a zombie story, at least for the first three, right?
Yeah. For the
But-
first three, it's definitely like a pseudo-zombie survival horror.
Pseudo-zombie survival action shooter.
Mixed with a
horror.
lot of religion.
Yeah. Fake religion.
I mean, the Ark.
I was more referring to the Covenant.
Yeah,
Oh, the
I was
Covenant.
thinking the
Oh, yes,
Covenant.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's because the Covenant is.
I thought you were talking about the Forerunners and their
yeah,
obsession with Christianity.
With Bungie's shameless habit of pulling from themselves. For people who are more familiar with Destiny than they are with Halo, the Covenant is effectively the Fallen.
I don't know what that means either.
The Fallen in Destiny are a race of effectively insect aliens that worship the Traveler, and the Traveler is the entity or being that gives the Guardians, your main character, the protags, etc., your powers.
Gotcha.
But the Traveler has decided and chosen that for the most part, humans, Exos, and Awoken are the vessels that are his guardians of light.
Although all three of those were once human.
Yes, Exos are humans that were turned into robots. Awoken are humans that have been... I can't remember exactly what happened to Awokens.
They were humans that were caught in between the light and dark at the same time, that were clashing and formed a rift in space and time, and created the Awoken in their own pocket dimension.
Okay.
And then the Fallen are people
Fallen
that
are-
humans that turned into bugs?
No, the Fallen are just their own independent insect race
Oh,
that
gotcha.
I think at one point were the Travelers chosen. They did at one point hold the power of light, but then the species either lost his favor or he moved on,
He moved because the darkness
overtook them.
the darkness came in, found them, and the Traveler fled, leaving them behind.
Okay, so the Fallen are they're their own independent and sapient race of insect people who traditionally worship the Traveler, who is more kind of your god, but you don't really worship it like a god. It's if in D&D terms, it's like you're a warlock. All guardians in Destiny, in some way, shape, or form, are a warlock, because all of your power comes from this patron, this giant floating white orb in the sky,
Whether you want it to or not.
and you didn't do jack and shit to say anything about it.
So like a CEO.
Kinda. CEO, or just like maybe 2 or 3 rings up your management ladder. It's the
Okay,
person
yeah,
who-
so like my boss's boss is like...
the person who has the ability to fire you, and then you go to your boss about it, and they can't do anything.
Yeah, my boss's boss.
Yeah.
The only issue I have with that analogy is the Covenant only worship the Forerunners because they found their technology.
Yeah, but the biggest thing, in at least when it comes to the Fallen, is it's not just the Traveler that they worship, because the Traveler is revered by them as the Great Machine. The Fallen also worship technology and machinery as a whole, and just observe the Traveler as the greatest machine.
Yes, that is true.
So that's where I make the comparison, is because the Covenant wound up chasing after and developing this religion based off of the technology and the history of the Forerunners, while the Fallen were graced by the power of this once potentially great machine, had it taken away, and then continue to serve and worship machines anyway.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to my
Right,
question
back
real
to
quick
Halo.
about zombies. How would you compare Halo to your favorite zombie story? Not necessarily a book or a movie or even a video game, but any of those. Like as a story as a whole, which one's your favorite and how does it compare? Or is Halo your favorite zombie story?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite zombie story, but I think that the story that Halo tells through its use of zombie culture, and especially since it was one of the first ones to do it, since it was done in the early 2000s, at least for more modern zombie culture, I feel like the story is done pretty well, because especially if you are new to Halo, if you have for some way, shape, or form, lived effectively under a rock and have not been spoiled or have stayed away from the Halo story.
That's what this podcast is for.
Yeah, if you stayed away from the Halo story as a whole and you haven't touched it, the Halo 1 through 3, for the sake of being a zombie game, is a great ride. Because the story is compelling, it has very well-written characters, it has good dialogue, and once the zombies are introduced, they are terrifying. They are a constant threat whenever you are in areas where they are present, and it is always a struggle. Even on easier difficulties, it can be a pain in the ass. I think the storytelling is done well, but the example in and of itself of zombies isn't necessarily the best representation, because it lends itself again more to like almost of a fungal, like kind of mushroom type infection or something along those lines, rather than straight zombification.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I do like a lot of like the fungal zombie stories a lot of the time, because I feel like it's like, I think it's supposed to be scarier because it's much more plausible.
Yeah.
Than like a virus taking over our body. As
well as also, again, like the game came out in 2001. The whole idea of dealing with zombies really hadn't been touched on too much outside of a handful of old niche films from the 40s through the 80s. A few that came out in the 90s, and then for video games, zombie culture really hadn't been explored too much, I feel like, outside of the fantasy genre, Resident Evil, and Silent Hill.
Yeah.
At least over here in the West. I have no ability to say for really anywhere else. But that was growing up with that kind of gaming environment and everything, that was what I can remember looking back.
What I appreciated about Halo in the first two games, so those ones that I played, is that when I looked at it as a zombie story, I could see the differences. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, this is just a carbon copy of Resident Evil 2, because Resident Evil 2 came out 3 years prior to it in 1998. Like, it was one of those things where, like, I could see the differences, and I knew that one of them was meant to be a horror game, and the other one was supposed to be a first-person shooter.
It was meant to be an action title.
Yeah, it was the new Doom, if you will.
Yeah, kind of. You just didn't get to carry every weapon on you.
Yeah, pretty much.
I see Halo as a better version of Game of Thrones.
Elaborate.
Please.
The Flood is essentially the...
White Walkers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the North is fighting them and the South at the same time, like how the humans are fighting against the Covenant and the Flood at the same time, while everyone's just kind of fighting each other.
So is Jon Snow John Spartan?
You know nothing, John Spartan.
You know nothing, John Spartan. If that's not said in Halo Infinite by the end of this by Cortana, I'm going to be so upset.
Frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody actually said that. In all honesty, it would not surprise me if somebody said, "You know nothing, John Spartan."
But you guys get where I'm coming from with this?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
After you explain that, just like with the separation of the factions, that makes a lot of sense. Even for somebody like me, I haven't watched too much of Game of Thrones, but the comparison...
I find it better, less incest, and it's in outer space.
I mean, it depends on how many people they picked up and then left on these planets together.
Well, there's that. But also, if nothing else, every single one of the Halo games, even 4 and 5, for the people who really don't like 343, still had much more satisfying endings than Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care how much you hate Spartan Lock or whatever it was about Halo 5 that made you hate Halo 5. The ending of Halo 5 was still a better ending than the ending of Game of Thrones.
I keep seeing this post. It was from a few years ago, and I think I had it on Facebook a while back. But it was basically like, a bad ending to a show is so detrimental, because you remember how when Game of Thrones was going on,
it was the most raved and talked about show
it was
ever.
The only
Everybody loved it.
It was the only thing anybody talked about. And then they had a shitty final season, and then crickets. Nobody talked about it anymore except for how bad it was.
Yeah, no, then a bad thing is twice as detrimental to something as a positive thing is good.
Yes.
I would specifically say that for
podcast later.
Endings, because if it happens in the middle, it can become better.
So, what are your guys' favorite zombies stuff? Like, your favorite zombie story? Just in general, just like, and you can compare it to Halo if you'd like to, but I just want to find out what you thought.
I'm a fairly big fan of the Resident Evil story as an overarching thing in regards to how they deal with zombies. The
Movie or game?
I mean, the movies try to tell the stories of the games, but I'm still a little bit more partial to the games themselves. I haven't played a whole ton of them just because, like, the actual play style of the game isn't really my niche.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the later games have fungus as the driving factor to make zombies, right?
That's
Moss specifically.
Moss. I'm sorry, it's not. It's a lichen.
Well, in
Lichen making zombies.
in 4, it was some kind of like an embryo.
It was a
deal.
parasite called the Las Plagas.
That's it. It was a parasite. So,
And I believe in 5, they traced it all back to a flower in Africa.
and 6 was the TC virus.
So we're gonna have Sai back on for when we do a Resident Evil one, because apparently he knows goddamn
lot.
everything about Resident Evil as well.
But I would say, back to the original topic, the Resident Evil story is probably one of my favorites as far as just like a straight zombie story. I think it does a really good job of establishing an effective, like, and plausible world full of zombies and terror. Like, yes, there are zombies technically at every corner, especially if you're within the bounds of Raccoon City.
Mm-hmm.
But then it winds up treating the infection in a very serious way with how far it winds up spreading through other parts of the world or in other sections. And yes, a lot of the zombies get, like, very over-the-top, like, unreasonable, like the lickers and...
To be fair, those were created not by the T virus, but by the G virus.
True, fair. I'm speaking more, like, vague, like, generally across, like, I'm at least doing Resident Evil 1 through 6, because those are the ones that mainly focus on that kind of zombification, while 7 and 8 kind of focus a bit more on, like, fanciful stuff.
Yeah.
And with those ones, it's a much more plausible, in my mind, kind of reaction to zombification, barring, like, the super outlying ones, like the mysterious stranger from 2, or Nemesis from 3, or just, like, any of the recurring, like, big mambling zombies that just... you can't do anything against until you get to the last fight where you're supposed to fight them, and if you try to touch them, they just...
Right.
But all in all, it's probably one of the most one of my most enjoyed interpretations of how zombification and the defense against such is portrayed.
I like that.
I really like the Resident Evil ones because as you progress through it, while the zombies do tend to stay the same, but they also you also come across mutated ones that you also have to be constantly evolving, like the viruses.
Okay. Is that your answer too?
Yes, I really like Resident Evil.
I could tell. My favorite's a little bit different. Actually, you see that book right there, Red Harvest?
Yeah.
That's a Star Wars zombie book. Basically, there's I can't remember if it's a fungus or a something that this Sith Lord finds and brings back to a Sith Academy and uses it. He's like, oh, it'll give me immortal life. And it will, as a zombie. And it starts, like, slowly infecting all of the Sith Academy students. And they all have lightsabers and stuff like that.
So you just got zombies with force powers and lightsabers and no inhibitions.
Yes. They don't know how to use their force powers or their lightsabers, except for the Sith Lord, who has a better mental capacity than the children.
The Force protects him just barely enough that he retains his basic training.
Yeah, he remembers his consciousness. He's basically like Dwayne Johnson in Doom, the movie, at the end where he's like, I'm infected, but I'm also a badass, so I know what I'm doing. And you're just like, okay, that doesn't make any sense, but go on.
So freaking, yeah. Yeah, I get that. I think probably another really good zombie one that I actually forgotten about since you brought that one up was the Darkest Night story from DC.
Yeah, with the black lantern rings. I have those up there. I have all the lantern rings up there.
Yeah, with the black and white lantern core, the Darkest Night story is such a good zombie story, and especially with how hard hitting it was with all of the people that they decided to bring back strictly for the shock value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bringing back both of Bruce Wayne's parents, they bring back Superboy Prime. Every single important character to any character in the DC universe who had died came back, and that was heart-wrenching, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was so good. I hope that they do a very good job making an animated version of
and
it.
And also finally sealed the nail in the coffin that Kyle Reiner is the strongest Lantern of all time.
Kyle Reiner's a joke. Anyway.
I didn't say he was the strongest Green Lantern, but he is the strongest Lantern. Side tangent. Mm-hmm. He's the only one who got 2 different colors, right? He got blue and green. He's had all of them.
Oh, that's right.
The reason why I say he's the most powerful lantern is because he's the only person who's ever held a lantern ring, and he's held all of them, and through his own power combined them into the White Lantern ring.
That's right.
Because everybody else was given a White Lantern ring. Kyle made his White Lantern ring. He has complete mastery over the emotional spectrum.
He's well balanced.
Perfectly balanced, as some might say.
He had his Wheaties. Balanced diet and all that. For the book I was talking about, with this, the next one over from it is called Death Troopers, which is basically at the end of the first one, they find this zombie on a ship and they kick it out of the ship and it's floating through space. Flash forward 1,000 years later, and a bunch of Sith find it and they pick up the body, and it starts eating all the stormtroopers on the ship. And these stormtroopers are just trying to hide from this zombie, and then they all start turning into zombies. It's so great.
It's so good.
It's so much fun. It is like a roller coaster. It's not even scary. It's just so fun.
I did make a mistake. Resident Evil 7 and 8, it's not moss, it's mold.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
I knew it was some like relatively benign thing, and I knew it wasn't like a living creature, but I knew it was some kind of fauna. I just couldn't remember what.
It was mold that looks like a fetus.
Because that's a thing.
I mean, isn't that what Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus is about?
I don't know, man. There is so much to that game that I didn't pay attention to.
I will never say the real title of that game because everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. And if you don't, go look it up.
Because there's only like two video games that I can think of in existence that have Norman Reedus a part of it, if only the one.
Yeah, and then the other one, only one of them has a funky fetus.
Exactly. I mean, if there's only one game with Norman Reedus, and if you're talking about the game with Norman Reedus, then immediately it's just like, oh, but the funky fetus is also like, it's a very important denotion.
Yes. I'm sure he's in a Walking Dead video game at some point.
He is.
Oh, yeah. Good. I'm glad I had that in there. Did you guys hear that he is going to be Ghost Rider?
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. I'm very excited because I think he'd be good at that. Except for I hope that he's not just Daryl from Walking Dead with a skull face. Because that would suck. That would disappoint me.
And I hope he doesn't try to be Nick Cage.
I hope he does try to be Nick Cage, because that would be hilarious.
It would be funny, but it's not the Ghost Rider I want. If I wanted a funny Ghost Rider, I'd watch another Nick Cage Ghost Rider. If I want an actual Ghost Rider to be a part of the MCU, give me something serious.
Also, doesn't Ghost Rider actually, like, speak a decent amount?
Yeah.
I mean...
So he couldn't be Daryl from Walking Dead then.
Weirdly enough, he doesn't have a tongue, but yes.
Yeah, but when you've got enough flaming magic to keep your skull head floating above your torso with no neck, you can talk.
I always felt like it was like telepathy. Like he's also secretly psychic, and that's why he can hold his pet up over.
No, he's just an amazing ventriloquist.
He's just a he just hides behind him with a little like thumb trigger to move the mouth.
Have both of you guys seen One Piece?
Depends on how far.
Do you know who Brook is?
Yeah.
Ghost Rider is just him with the fire fruit.
A little bit, but also Ghost Rider's not a pervert.
At least not the one you know.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Halo's a thing.
We kind of got distracted.
It's good. Go play it. I'm sure it's on Steam or something.
The Halo Master Chief Collection is available on Steam as well as Halo Infinite. The multiplayer for Halo Infinite is free, and the story is $60.
Halo Wars separate does not come in the Master Chief Collection.
I have never, I don't know what Halo Wars is, so I just assumed it was like Dynasty Wars, but with Halo characters.
It's more of a, think Command & Conquer, or Battle for Middle-earth if you're familiar with that.
So like a boring game.
Yes. It's pretty much the only reason why you would play it is for the cutscenes that create more story for Halo 4.
If you're into tactical sims and that kind of a stuff, Halo Wars would be a great game for you to try to play. If you're strictly looking for more Halo lore, Halo Wars is a great game to play for that, or you can just watch a cutscene compilation.
Yeah, no dissing on tactical games. It's just I don't have the time or the patience.
As somebody with ADHD, I still do love tactical games from time to time, but they take way too much time and focus. I get distracted. It's not easy.
I can't even play League of Legends.
Yeah, but that just makes you smart.
I actually promised one of my viewers that once I get 1 sub, that I will actually play League of Legends.
Play
Play it for the first time.
Here.
I've never played it.
No,
Okay.
that's fine. That's fine. All I will say is that the 1 sub, just your first sub, and that 1 sub equates to 1 game of League of Legends.
What you should do is that you should just download Smite and play that instead. And you're like, it's the same thing. Does it matter?
Technically, I could just play Pokemon Unite.
True.
Oh, yeah. You should just do that instead. You're like, it's the same thing. Don't nitpick. Give me another sub if you want me to play the actual game.
I mean, to be fair, there's no videos as far as I know of a full Masters team bullying a whole family in League of Legends. Like, I'm not kidding. There's actually a video out there of, like, an all-level, Master levels Pokemon Unite team, like, their group, just absolutely dumpstering this family of 5 who are just playing the game.
Wow.
That's kind of sad. That's kind of really sad. Oh. All right, we're gonna start wrapping this up. This is Mr. Enigma's Pop Culture Queries, where we talk about whatever the fuck we want. Elo, where can they find you?
You can find me over at twitch.tv/Elocrity. That is ELOCRTY. CRITY. Apologies.
I spelled it wrong the first time too.
It's not an easy name. It's easier to say once you hear it. I don't really have I don't have a schedule set up at the moment, but I play JRPGs, ARPGs, tactical games, a lot of first-person shooters with some MMOs. And have a generally pretty good time. I'm also recently debuted as a VTuber.
Sai, where can they find you?
Twitch.tv/Psyras, PSYRAS. I mainly play Dead by Daylight, but I have played Halo. And I'm playing more horror games right now. And also Minecraft, because it's a very chill game. And Getting Over It with Betty Foddy.
Have you seen that game?
Getting over it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been playing that, and he's very calm about the entire endeavor.
It's so relaxing.
You should try Jump King.
I told him to do Happy Wheels.
Well, Happy Wheels is never ending, and that's just funny because people make some wacky shit in that. Jump King is just like effectively the Pogo, it's almost the Pogo version because there's actually a Pogo version of
called
Getting Over
Pogo
It,
Stuck.
called Pogo Stuck. But like Jump King is virtually the same thing, but like with an actual story and not some dude who's just condescendingly talking to you and making you sound like your freaking frustrations and your actions are invalidated.
Oh, I've fallen so much that he is shut up.
So I have a funny anecdote really quick before we wrap this up. So I went to go follow Elocrity on Twitch, and I spelt it wrong and just followed like this 14-year-old kid in Uganda. just fucking played Minecraft, and I was watching it and I'm like, that doesn't sound like Elo. So I'm like, yeah, I'm out. And then I finally found it. I'm like, okay, now we're actually playing like games that aren't Minecraft. Respectfully, yes.
Where does this make sense?
Yes.
Newsflash, doesn't.
It doesn't. So yeah, that's my.
It makes sense that Mr. E can't spell.
Yeah, I actually shortened my name to Mr. E so that I don't have to figure out how to spell Enigma.
Despite the fact that isn't one of your favorite DC villains isn't Enigma a part of his last name?
Oh no, his last name is Nigma.
I know his last name is Nigma.
His name is Edward Nigma. Enigma. Yep.
Yeah, I know. That should make it easy enough since how much you like the Riddler.
I know. Well, Mr. E is easier to say, and it sounds like mystery.
Yeah, but this is
fun.
also coming from a dyslexic.
Yeah. Well, mystery sounds like I'm a Scooby-Doo villain.
Yeah. Also, Mr. E is actual Scooby-Doo character.
And pseudo-villain from the Mystery Incorporated series, just to elaborate that, because he's not in literally anything else. So if you just go look up the old Scooby-Doo shows, he won't be there. He plays a keytar, guys. That's all I've ever wanted in my life. He just randomly, ominously, spins in his rolling chair, playing the keytar, some ominous bullshit music, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. This guy's the bad guy? He has a pet parrot, who's also a bad guy?
I mean, if Community's any example, good guys don't play keytars.
That's true. That's true. There's never been a good guy playing a guitar. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for everybody for listening. I'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.